Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and the narrative, as well as personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be discussing how the single chapter of the manga connects to the rest of the series as a whole. As usual, we begin these episodes with a reading of the chapter that we are discussing for the episode. This is Chapter 101, Split Under the Red Stalk. Bleach. No! Captain Eisen! Captain Eisen, no! No! Captain Eisen! Captain Eisen! What is it? Why all the noise so early in the morning? Beware. Beware the third company. Especially when Eisen goes out alone. You did this! Izuru, why? I'm assistant captain of the third company. No one draws a sword against my captain for any reason. Izuru, please, step aside. I can't. Step aside. Move. No. I'm telling you to move. And I'm telling you I won't. Snap. Tobi Ume. Flying plum tree. What? You dare draw your Zanbakuto here? That's foolish. Do you realize what you're doing? This is no place to resolve personal matters. Assistant Captain Hitamori. I see. Then it can't be helped. I must treat you as an enemy. Show yourself, Wabisuke. Don't move, either of you. Toshiro. Arrest them. Both of them. I'll report this to the Captain General. Take them away. I'm sorry my man troubled you, Captain. Ichimaru. Just now, you tried to kill Momo, didn't you? What? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm telling you right now, if you make Momo bleed, I'll kill you. You're scaring me. But you'd better keep an eye on her. You don't want any misfortune to befall her. Ugh. Hanataro, you idiot! What are you doing? Sleeping in my lap? Pathetic! Hey! You slobbered all over my best pants, you little fool! He's exhausted. It's only a little drool. Ichigo? Are you better already? Yeah, thanks to Hanataro. You're feeling better too, right? He healed your wounds while he was still woozy from healing mine. One more try. This time I'm gonna make it. Let's go to the Senzaikyuu. Exclusive 4th Company relief bag. Fastener becomes like this. This part detaches. And that is it for Chapter 101 of the Bleach manga. This was another chapter title that I can't remember. But hopefully we're getting there all the same. This is a pretty interesting chapter. There's a couple different things to talk about. Looking forward to it. But let's get back to the opening page. And I do believe that this was a color spread. At the end of the video, at the very least, I'm going to try to find the actual color page that this is. Because the way that this speaks to me, the way that I guess it's a color page and then a full black page, which is Bleach. Usually that's because they have a color page in the actual Shonen Jump version, but then whenever it gets published black and white in the collected volumes, it's just black and white. But just because of the gradient and the tones used, I think it's color. I could be wrong. This could be intentionally a black and white image that's just given kind of softer grays than what is usually featured. But yeah, we'll see if I can't find a color page for it. Nevertheless, this is 101 split under the red stalk. This is Bleach, and I like that we do get in the chapter, we get these kind of the little intercuts of the different characters, like this stylization of having these kind of panels of the characters is something that Bleach likes to do. See, Bleach, Kubo likes to do, and you got a little bit of that in the first opening in Asterisk for the anime, which was kind of cool because it amalgamated a lot of these covers of the characters. And so I like this one because it's got our our Rockin' Future 6 in it, you know. But no, it's got essentially what has become our protagonist group, minus Mr. Yorichi, who is somewhere. We haven't heard from him in a while, but it reminds us, of course, of all of our groups: are Chad, Orihime, Ichigo, Ganju, Hanataro, and Ryu Ishida. Of course, you know, we've got enough characters to fill each of the letters for Bleach, so that's a cool little alignment. Immediately coming back to where we were in the last chapter, Hinamori is in distress over seeing her captain and assumably good friend. You can speculate over whether or not there was something romantic there. I tend to kind of see it as Aizen just being a very benevolent captain, and Hinamori's affections for him being, maybe unreciprocated, a little one-sided. That she's got a bit of infatuation going on, but that Aizen is handling it with a deal of compassion, rather than completely turning her away. But I don't think he's really embracing her either. Nevertheless, I mean, he's not embracing shit anymore. Look at him. But I do like that we get this kind of the streak of his blood running all the way from the bottom of the panel up, which is, I guess, from the top of the panel down, runs to the very bottom of the panel. I think that's very striking. And like here, Hinamori being pushed up, assumingly against the wall itself. She feels like she's very cramped into this panel. That like her grief sort of is overwhelming. Everyone else is sort of in shock. Maybe not just about Aizen's death, but also the way that Hinamori is handling this. Right? She's just shrieking. Yeah, here we get a better look at the cut that he has on his cheek, as well as the wounds that are running down him. It seems as though, whatever happened on his chest maybe like splattered up against his face. Either that or he was fighting someone and he wounded them. It's unclear. We do know, again, consistent with the last chapter, his sword is still sheathed at his hip. So, assumably, they killed him without a fight, but he still has this cut on his cheek as well. So, there's a little bit going on there. Definitely left for spectacle, so they might have just carved up his body after the fact to make even more of a scene. Anyway, of course, to instigate a little bit further, Ichimaru again does in fact show up. And you have to wonder a little bit about him, because we saw in the previous chapter he left with Kira Izuru that previous night, and, what did they get up to? Where'd they go? Who knows? I mean, all the other captains are unaccounted for as well, but with Hitsugaya suspecting Gin especially whenever Aizen is alone, well, it's weird that Gin shows up here, right? It's certainly suspicious. And Hinamori is remembering what Toshiro said, right? And so I love this like back and forth. You get and he looks completely unfazed. Everybody else is sweating. They're a little unnerved by this. I do love the shot there where you get like just a little bit of Tetsuzaimon and Izuru Kira like in the foreground here, as everybody looks back to Gin, and he's just like, oh hey, well there's a dead Aizen, huh? And he's just, of course, got his constant smile, which, come on, cohort, your compatriots, your fellow ally, is been murdered in front of you. But perhaps captains are the way they are because they have stronger temperament. Now she's remembering these intercuts of Hitsugaya warning her, especially about the third company, but especially when Aizen goes alone. Which, whenever he said especially, and then we didn't get the rest of that sentence, right? We thought maybe he would be talking about a specific person. In fact, I didn't even remember the especially part. And it's probably because the delivery is actually pretty underwhelming, it feels, right? Oh, yeah, worry about Aizen, especially whenever he's alone. It's like, well, yeah, anyone alone can be attacked, right? You have a whole Ryoka evasion going on, you know, much less this conspiracy. So, like, of course. But I think the thing that we're supposed to take to heart here is that maybe Hinamori went to go kind of be with Aizen that night because she wanted to keep an eye on him and she didn't want to fall asleep and she wanted to make sure that he didn't get a chance to go out alone or be alone. She wanted to kind of ensure that he was protected. And so the fact that Aizen went out alone, I think Hinamori is feeling as much as she does because she feels somewhat responsible for his death, that she couldn't be there to maybe change things one way or another. Nevertheless, the culmination of Hinamori's own kind of frustrations and grief and maybe even blaming herself, and then that suspicion, even a little bit of suspicion that she had thrown upon her. Seeing Gin show up there, completely nonplussed about this, perhaps even smiling about this, throws her into a rage, and so she declares that it must have been Gin that did it, right? Which, obvious red herring character is obvious, but maybe he did. Maybe he's acting so obviously kind of the victim, or not the victim, but he's acting so obviously evil, perhaps not even evil, just callous or uncaring, because he is. Maybe he actually did want to see this come through. Maybe he did it himself. Nevertheless, he doesn't seem all too perturbed by Aizen's death. So, she charges him, of course. But Gin being a captain, he doesn't even seem phased. Like, he's not even bracing himself for her approach, which I love that. It's a great detail that we get her, like, flinging into motion. And here she draws Tobiume, which we've learned the name of her Zanpakuto this. We also get to see in this chapter the design that's on the hilt. So it's got these little flowers, which is, we know her name for it, right? We get a little bit of that later. I think it has to do with flowers as well. But here, Kirigards, we can't really see all too much the design that's on Wabisuke, but it's got kind of a more traditional square hilt. But I love that he jumps in the way, right? Blocks the attack for Gin. So Gin was, doesn't even seem like he was going to stop this. And it could very well much be this sort of situation that we saw with Ichigo, where Ichigo was able to with his resolve, was able to stop Renji's attack with his bare hand, and maybe the hollow mask that appeared on him stopped an earlier attack. But at the end of that battle, Ichigo was able to strengthen his resolve and therefore strengthen his reishi and not be stricken by the conflicted Renji. And so I think Gin here maybe even understands that. He maybe understands that, like, there is no way in which Hinamori injures Gin. His resolve seems to be pretty absolute. Like, he doesn't seem conflicted or flinching over anything as far as he lets on. Whereas Momo, even though she might be resolved to kill him, she has quite a lot going on. And so it's going to be a little bit harder for her to temper her strikes against him. And so not just that, but we also understand Gin to be a captain and quite a powerful character indeed, if Zaraki is to be believed, right? So the fact that Momo is raising a sword against him, it doesn't get blocked for the sake of protecting Gin so much as it is that Kira would, sees it as maybe a besmirchment upon her, that striking him would see her, maybe even executed. So he stops her maybe for her own sake as well, and we do get a little bit of that. I love that she's distraught because she thought she could trust Izuru, right? But whenever push comes to shove, I mean, she's the one doing the pushing and the shoving, trust. But when push comes to shove and she draws a sword on Izuru's captain, Izuru is the one to interpose himself to raise his sword against her, which only helps to confirm what Hitsugaya said, you know, not trust the third, right? That clearly they're thicker than their friendship. And so this is interesting because we come into Bleach's themes once more. We talking about this before, the connections people have, right? And so here, even though Momo really believed in the connection she had with Izuru, she felt like she could confide in him. We get those scenes earlier where she's constantly kind of going to Izuru for what to do in a situation and for some sort of comfort, and Izuru's able to afford that to her. Here, he stands against her, and he insists that no, he's the captain, you know, he's the assistant captain of the third company. No one, doesn't matter what their relationship is to him, can draw a sword against their captain for any reason. And so she's like begging with him, you know, to step aside and move, you know, to consider her and their relationship with her. But Kira won't. Kira stands firm to that occupational kind of connection. Now, if Kira has a personal connection to Ichimaru again, we really haven't seen any of that so far. I mean, he had a little cute smile whenever Gin showed up in the previous chapter. I thought that was adorable. But, you know, nevertheless, Kira very much takes his position as Gin's subordinate incredibly seriously. And, you know, maybe for good reason. Who knows? But, nevertheless, he's not willing to step aside and kind of let this person essentially murder his own captain on his watch, even if it is his friend. So she gets furious, and Izuru insists otherwise. And so here she finally releases Tobi Ume, the flying plum tree, and it gets this 7-branch design and catches fire, which is really cool. I wonder if we get a better shot of it elsewhere, a better panel of it. But I do like, you know, like her absolute rage. And so this is something, you know, like maybe you didn't expect that Hinamori Momo was going to have a sword that would catch and shoot fireballs, but she's a little spitfire herself, eh? Eh? She has a very like flaming, you know, I say flaming personality, a very fiery sort of personality. She's quick to anger. She's very flighty. Of course, Kira probably wasn't expecting her to up the ante and release her sword on him. So this explosion happens, and I do love that we get to see the other side here. Assumably this is Ichimaru again here, just kind of like, nah, cool guys, don't look away. Like just letting the explosion happen in front of him. I love Kira hitting the floor, skidding back with all hands on the ground as she's ready to follow up with the next strike. And I do like this kind of progression that we have. Kira calling her out. I like that he's like, this is, no place, like, in front of Aizen, right? And here, we do get to see kind of a little bit of how her sword works, is that it can create these combustible sort of flames, and not only can it create an explosion point blank, but she can fling them as well with a stroke of her sword, which is kind of cool. It's different from everything we've seen. So far, all the Zanpakuto that we've really seen, other than maybe Benihime, they were all very martial sort of types, where they did these transformations to the functionality of the weapon, right? So what we got with, what am I even talking about? What we got with Hozokimaru and Kujaku, how can I remember that one? I always forget. Old what's his face? Now I can't even remember the character's name. Jeez, Ikaku and Yumachika. Those characters, both their weapons transformed physically. It took on a different physical capability, right? And then fast forward to we had the Kamitachi, right? Jirobo, his weapon transformed into several sickles that he could command and throw about. Renji, as we know, his sword becomes the chain sword. So we've had a lot of weapons that became different kinds of physical weapons that somebody could manipulate for an advantage, but we haven't had one that's been this elementally defined, that's been supernatural in this other sort of way, right? Or actually more supernatural. You know, allowing that a weapon can transform into another weapon, you don't have to make like that. There's multiple leaps of kind of fantasy consideration. Whereas here, it's not just that her weapon is transformed physically, but that it's also take on this other magical property, or fantastical supernatural property where she can literally generate explosions and flame from it. And so, of course, she lobs this fireball over at Kira because even though Kira insists that, like, hey, maybe we'll resolve this somewhere else, this isn't a place, do you realize, like, the severity of what you're doing, this is treason kind of thing. Um, she's trying to be, like, kind of judge, jury, executioner, and has passed judgment on Gin with no evidence. Yeah, he hits her with the Shikata Ganai, the cannot be helped. And so we get a very serious shot of Kira. We haven't really seen Kira as gravely yet, but here Kira really does seem like a ferocious sort of opponent. I really like the way that he's depicted in this fight because before then, it's easy to kind of read Kira as like, oh, that's like the emo guy, or that's the kind of moody sort of lackluster kind of character. Certainly, that's the kind of read that I had on him whenever I was younger. But I like that, like, he has this very kind of intensity to him whenever he gets into a battle, which a lot of characters do. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that Momo is surprising a lot of people here too because she comes off as so flighty, and tender even whenever she's with Aizen. But here we can see how distress has pushed her to another extreme emotion of hers, right? And this grief and frustration and anger. But that's only also allowed Kira to kind of push back because maybe as emotional and combustible as Hinamori is proving herself to be, Kira is stalwart and stoic and kind of not cold and unfeeling, but certainly is a little bit more of the one to consider things fully, rather than jumping to kind of emotional conclusions. Kira often served as Momo's rock, so here they are, the rock in the hard place, right, pushing down. And I love that he leaps into the air, and his sword's gathering all of this Reiatsu as he reveals his transformation for his weapon, right? Show yourself, Wabisuke, which I don't think show yourself actually ends up being the release command. So we know you have like Roar, Zabimaru, and all of that. I don't think show yourself is actually the release command for Wabasuke. I believe that there's a different release command, but that could be me just misremembering it. I think here he's saying show yourself just to like reflect it being released, and maybe this is an oversight. I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty positive Wabasuke's got a different release command. Maybe I'll talk about that in the spoiler section because I don't want to spoil what it might be. Nevertheless, before we can really see what Wabasuke is capable of, Hitsugaya is the one to block Wabasuke as well as to kick away Momo's Tobi Ume. And it's kind of neat here. I like this is a fantastic composition for a panel. I love Kira, coming down with the blunt of the blade of Wabasuke, and it's an interesting kind of design. So like we see the release design of Wabasuke, and it kind of curls inward like that. So it's got the blade facing the opponent, but then it's like the inside of the top, and it's kind of like almost like a question mark or like a big J or something. It's a strange design indeed. Certainly, here looking at Tobi Ume, we've got like these kind of long branches that branch off of her sword. And I think that's meant to be evocative of the seven branch sword. Or well, you can look it up, Google it. It's a historical artifact, but it's often kind of steeped in mythologies, and you'll tend to find it in various video games and other places. So it is that's the illusion kind of being made there with hers. But Wabasuke, it's a little more unclear what exactly his weapon is capable of, and we do not find out in this encounter as it gets cut short. I do like that, of course, because Hitsugaya's sword is on his back, he can have this very cool, like, back to one opponent using his sword to block as he unsheaths it, as he kicks down the other and faces his friend, Hinamori, right? And we have him being very serious, and again, aligning with Soul Society over Hinamori's personal interest, right? Where she's in tears, thinking maybe she can trust him, perhaps, and he calls for the arrest of both of them. And so they're both grabbed up to be arrested. And of course, I like that Toshiro tries to kind of take control of the situation in a way that Gin didn't, right? Toshiro very quickly stops this fight. He has them both arrested. He's going to report this to the, Tsukata General Yamamoto, Shigekune Yamamoto Ginryusai. We got his full name, Shigekune. First mention of Shigekune being his actual first name. Most of the time, it's easy to remember the character as Ginryusai or Yamamoto, but the Shigekune is in there too. Old man, long name. Anyway, of course, Gin approaches. Still, just watched his assistant captain, his vice captain, get arrested and come to blows. He doesn't seem all that bothered. Of course, Hitsugaya calls out Gin. He says, "Oh, you tried to kill Momo just now, didn't you? You know that you were about to kill Momo." And you can see that Gin's hand is held in this sort of position, like he's gonna pinch. I don't think he was gonna pinch Momo to death. I think the idea was that his hand was ready to draw his sword and impale her with Shinso. Which that's another one that just has like a physical transformation, right? It can just grow longer, right? I always remember that. Shinso is the first release that we see in of all of the captains, but in Soul Society period of any of these Shinigami. I mean, Zabimaru is technically the first revealed state that we see, period. But once we get in the Soul Society arc, it's interesting, and maybe that's a little bit of why I like Gen. I don't know, that like I think he has an interesting kind of concept, and maybe I like him because he occupies such an interesting space in the manga. Right, where like it's clear he's lying. Like whenever he says like I got no idea what you're talking about, and like this exchange here, right, where again Hitsugaya, even though he was operating pretty professionally just now, we see where Hitsugaya falls, right? That if somebody is to injure someone close to Hitsugaya, like Momo, who's clearly a friend of his, she doesn't care about like his position as captain whenever she addresses him. And, he tries to remind her of it, but they're still clearly friends. Maybe they even grew up together. But clearly he cares about her enough that if Gin was ever to injure her in any way, then he would kill Gin, which is pretty serious, right? I mean, the entire inciting incident of this is a captain being killed. So the fact that Hitsugaya is willing to say that sort of a thing, it's no idle threat. And to love, of course, Gen's response is just to smile even more and be like, "Oh, you're scaring me," But then gives a pretty sinister response himself, right? Well, you got to keep an eye on her. You don't want any misfortune to befall her. Which is true. I mean, he should. There's Ryoka running around. If you don't want your friend to get hurt or injured, you should make sure that she's taken care of. She's safe. There's these 11th Division guys. They're real rowdy out there. They might start something. You never know. And there's somebody, whoever killed Aizen, he's out there. So, like, Gen's not speaking falsely here, but he certainly doesn't seem scared at all, right? He doesn't seem affected by this, by Aizen's death, or by these threats being made on his life. Maybe he did intend to kill Momo. Maybe that was going to be his answer, is that if Momo was truly, wasn't done in by Kira, then Gin would kill her should she prove that she could maybe defeat Kira. Like to basically just put her down, which is a pretty severe kind of response. But I don't know. It's hard to kind of tell exactly where Gin is. Like, hard to pin him down right now. Which, again, I think that builds for an interesting character. I think that lends itself to his popularity. Is that he occupies, like I said, such a unique and strange kind of place. We hop away from that encounter to come back to Ganju, who, oh, look at Hanataro, he fell asleep. But I like how he gets like thudded off and he just sort of slobber falls off. He's so tired. Of course, these are Ganju's best pants. And we get Ichigo with a new scar up his arm. We'll see how long Kubo continues to consistently draw that on him. He's been pretty good about the other scars so far. I'll have to check Renji for the chin scar from Ichigo. But he's got bigger cuts from Ichigo to show off now, doesn't he? Nevertheless, I do like that we get Ichigo. He's got the strap for Zangetsu over one shoulder like that. I like him kind of holding it. And yeah, it's revealed that, of course, Hanataro worked all through the night, not just to patch up Ichigo, but also to patch up Kanju as well. Good guy, Hanataro. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him having little nice dreams here. Look, he's so happy. he's so satisfied with himself. And so Ichigo resolves that this time they're going to make it to Rukia, right? And we see in the distance the silhouette of Kenpachi Zaraki. And so maybe Kenpachi has finally found the person he's looking for. Maybe this is a lead-in to a battle with Kenpachi and at least one of our human characters, but probably Ichigo, right? Especially since it's, okay, Ichigo, I'm ready to go. We go back to the Senzaiku, we look in, and there's Kenpachi on the parapets and the ramparts waiting for his opponent. Because certainly this is where they were sighted, and this is where that fight happened with Renji. And so Kenpachi does not have to go very far from there. If that's where they're headed, there's only really one way in. So maybe he'll stay there. We get a little bit of a detail on the Fourth Company's relief bag. It's exclusive to them, which is nice. So if you ever see anyone with this bag, they probably are Fourth Company. I like that, it detaches, and then the actual fastening part of the bag is like a zipper. So the outside of it's the outside, but the inside, kind of on this side, is a zipper that they can open up. And yeah, these little cute little, like, they call it a fastener, but I guess a zipper is what I'm calling it. Nevertheless, it's neat that we get, some idea about the function of these bags, a little bit of how they work. And that's it for this chapter, really. I like this chapter a good bit. I like a lot of Bleach chapters. Go figure. It is one of my favorite manga ever written, and especially a lot of the earlier chapters of Bleach I do enjoy quite a lot. I also need to remember to see if there's a color page for this. I'll have to check the weekly one. If the color page is at the end of the video, I found a color page for it, maybe not the actual one, because people do color mock-ups all the time, and it can be kind of hard to go and find like what was actually published in the Weekly Shonen Jump. But we'll see if we can't. Nevertheless, yeah, I do like this chapter. I think it's a good kind of follow-up to what we had before, right? That we get those tensions brewing over. We get the beginning of like I said before, a schism between the Shinigami, right? That there are certainly those that are going to take Captain Aizen's death personally and try to find somebody to blame for it. And it certainly seems like Ishimaru, again, is more and more suspicious as the days continue. Even though he claims he's done nothing wrong. And maybe he has done nothing wrong. Maybe he is a convenient scapegoat for whoever is actually to blame. But I think the reason why I bring that up is it seems like it maybe would be a little bit too obvious if it was Gin. So it's easy to second guess that. But nevertheless, we can think about who it might be. And we don't have a lot of really great candidates right now. I mean, we don't know about a lot of the characters, right? So you have to think about any murder mystery. It's like, well, you need to know enough for it to be satisfying one way or another. And it could be a character we haven't been introduced whatsoever, but there needs to be some sort of element of payoff. So, like, something thematically that links to this killer, or something, narrative wise that makes it satisfying whenever we get to this killer, right? It could be less about the killer's identity and more about these kind of larger politics going on, right? These larger sort of questions about, who do you really serve? Do you serve your personal connections and feelings to people, or do you serve the militaristic Soul Society and the structure of the Soul Society and the Gote and its hierarchy more than anything? And I think that's really whenever I talk about the schism, whenever I talk about this divide, whenever I talk about, people start to take sides. The sides that we see tend to be people that are either on one of seemingly three sides, right? There is, of course, the side of the assassination, right? The side of the conspiracy, those who are really in the know, and that's the kind of a side that everybody's trying to suss out. But the two really big sides kind of end up being people that are loyal to the Gote above all else, people who represent the society part of the individual versus society, and those who are loyal to the actual connections they have to other people. And so here, Momo, who is shown to be kind of violent and extreme, uh, is one of the people that it would be aligned more with the side that we associate with our protagonists, right? Like Ichigo. And so, I think that's clever that it's not just a black and white, like, oh, well, everybody who fights for, their lived connections is a perfectly sane and normal person. And everybody that fights for an organization, well, they're just evil and deluded. No, there's definitely a menagerie of characters of different ethical sort of backgrounds on both sides, and I like that. I like that there's some diversity there. That there's a little bit more nuance. That it's not just about good versus evil, but about how you handle living within a society that asks you to value certain things over your friends' lives. How you navigate that. And so yeah, like we have Momo, who definitely cares about her connection to people over everything else, and almost doesn't even know how to function like within this kind of society. And certainly we're talking about how Aizen sort of like Aizen and Kira and these more kind of socially conscious folks, they've been really effective for balancing Momo out and calming her and all of that. And as she starts to lose those connections one by one, we see her become more unhinged, more dangerous as she flies off the handle to try to kill Ichimaru again. And is even willing to blow Kira up. So, striking. But yeah, it's neat. So we get to see that Kira and Gin certainly seem to err more on the sides of law, and Gin becomes a kind of interesting thing because it's like clearly he's doing things that are outside of the strict purview of Soul Society and the law of Soul Society, which is why he is suspicious, right? Because otherwise he doesn't seem to be really working off of any sort of personal ground, as far as we know. If he's got personal stakes in any of this, he certainly hasn't let us know. And then, yeah, Kira ultimately, whenever, like we said, push comes to shove, he sides with the Soul Society. He's willing to fight Hinamori because she would like raise a blade against his captain, right? And then on the other side, we have Toshiro, who would stop that fight and have them both arrested, ostensibly kind of working within the confines of the Soul Society. But then he also issues a very personalized threat. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, what he cares about are those connections, or at least those more serious ones. It's just that he's able to navigate that while still functioning as a member of the society. So it shows us different levels and degrees of people being functional, like independent and functional versus otherwise, right? Being entirely societally kind of absorbed, like by Yakua, right? Who doesn't seem to have any sort of personal connections whatsoever um, to those that their personal connection is really what drives them. Law be damned. Anyway, I like that. I like that we're finally seeing that in our ostensibly among all of our antagonists, because it helps to really flesh them out, helps to give them a lot more character, and helps to make them seem not like just like a monolithic sort of enemy to defeat, but instead living characters that are all a part of a larger sort of threat, metaphorically or otherwise. So that's where we are on this chapter. Let's talk about spoilers. Let's get into it. Of course, yeah. Again, I do thinking about this because I don't remember. I think it's Eisen himself who pinned his fake body up there. So Gen's probably just showing up to see what it looks like and taking maybe a little bit of joy in the idea of seeing the man that he wants to kill displayed as dead. Like, because if Eisen really had been killed at this moment, Gen would be having a good time. He's like, finally, like, this is what Gen wants. So Gen smiling here isn't him being duplicitous. It's actually Gen being incredibly honest, which is a surprise to reread in that context. Of course, as I mentioned, Hitsugai's warning, like, oh, when Aizen's alone, watch out. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. Like, boy genius, you figured that one out. Again, I know it's supposed to be, like I said, kind of building suspicion towards Gen, but also, having Momo sort of blame herself as well as blame Gen because she was there with Aizen. She let him go out alone. Man, that you did this panel. Now, of course, I do like that Kira ultimately jumps in the way, and I don't remember if Kira has any real reason to be this loyal to Ichimaru again. I don't recall that we're ever given very good reason. It's just kind of the man that Kira is. And we know Kira is someone who takes his duty very, very seriously. That's why his weapon ends up being like an executioner kind of style guillotine weapon, because he is this kind of soul society executioner guy. I don't know. He takes his grave duty with grave seriousness. He's still able to make interpersonal connections, but yeah, it's interesting because even afterwards, even the Hell arc, he's still like hunting down hollows and trying to like work as an agent of the Soul Society to a degree. Oh, I was going to talk about the Show Yourself Wabasuke. I'm pretty sure Bow Your Head Wabasuke is the actual release command, right? I'm almost positive it's Bow Your Head. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think the Show Yourself here is just him being like, okay, release Wabasuke, right? But yeah, let me think about it for a second because I'm pretty sure that is the case, or maybe it's raise your head. Something about your head, yeah. Maybe it's raise your head, Wabisuke. But I don't think it's show yourself. So I don't know if show yourself is just like not the translation they end up going with, because I definitely remember like the whole like bow your head or raise your head. The idea of a head being connected to it, haha, because he cuts off people's heads, right? Yeah, I think that's plus the idea of like raising one's head maybe speaks towards the idea of gravity one way or another. But nevertheless, I do like that he comes down with his blade, and perhaps that makes Hitsugai a little bit heavier, and that's why he's crunching in her sword with more force. Eh? I mean, technically, it would make Hitsugai's blade heavier technically. Regardless, I think it's cute. Kira striking from above like that with Wabasuke. I like that Kira gets grabbed up by Shuhei. I'm pretty sure that they were all academy trainees together. And so, Shuhei being the one to grab Kira maybe strikes him a little bit more than not. I like how distraught Kira looks in that moment. As far as trying to kill Momo, I don't know. I guess you could read it that way. I think Gin doesn't really care. I don't know that he's gonna because at this point, well, is Gin willing to just kind of leave as many bodies in his wake as possible on his blood path towards Aizen, or is he trying to finesse his way there? And so far, I don't know. I'd say it's mostly finesse. He does have those fights later with Hitsugaya, and I like that this sort of begins to be a moment where Hitsugaya is noticing these things about Gin, and it's going to lead up to this battle that he's going to have. So I do like that this is an initial conversation and confrontation, both that will be later kind of boiled over and paralleled. Yeah, I mean that's about it. Back to the other group. I don't really know if there's any connections. Yeah, their wounds are healed. Let's go to the Sensaikyu. Let's go fight Kenpachi. Let's go to next volume, the Undead already. I'm pretty sure that's 13 is the Undead, though the Kenpachi fight starts in this volume. Nevertheless, yeah, that's what we had to look forward to. But are there any other spoilers that you want to talk about? Any other things that you see connection to? Please do let me know. I think this idea of escalation and having to fight a stronger opponent back to back to back is certainly a structure Kubo likes to use. I mean, we're going to see that again in the the Arankar arc in Hueco Mundo, which people will often derive as feeling like it's just a redo of Soul Society, but I feel like it comes to different conclusions and ultimately does its own sort of things. But it's easy to see the similarities in structure because those are intentional, right? Nevertheless, I do like this whole setup, and I do like this whole chapter, and I enjoy kind of getting to revisit it and find different things from it. I like the kind of thematic things that are at play. But if there are other spoilers, please do let me know. If you see any other kind of big connections that you want to draw, let me know in the comments. Just make sure to tag it as a spoiler post first and foremost. And with that is it for this one, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been Karkur Gold, reminding you to go check out that Patreon, support me there. And if you can't, for whatever reason, I understand money's tight, then yeah, just sharing the video with your friends or people that you think might be interested. Giving the channel a subscribe if you've been watching all of these and you're still not subscribed. Yeah, I'd like that. I think that'd help me in different ways. It all helps, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And it's for that reason that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.